Hello friends, and welcome to the Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, let me ask you this question. Do you know, or believe, or feel that you are an eternal being here, having a human experience? Do you recognize the truth of that? If you do, this is a wonderful video for you. We are moving into this week's topic through the lens of us as eternal beings having a human experience and the power of intention. Those two ideas are inextricably linked. It's because we are eternal beings here having human experiences that we can have an intentional life at all. It's the power of intention that is co-creating with the power of us as eternal beings, which allows us to move forward with the current of intention to the things, the experiences, the relationships, the jobs, the artistic creations, the wonderful dreams that we have made for ourselves are placed on the current of intention, and we're following the river towards it. And it's because we are eternal beings that we can do that we can follow this river. It's because we are more than just this flesh and bony structure that is obvious to us with the receptors that we have in these bodies, with our eyes, with our ears, with our noses, and all of our sensory organs, all of our sensory skills show us that we are physical beings in this physical universe. But we're so much more than that. And it's because we are so much more than that that we are able to live intentional lives. But that intentional life that we live is, yes, a life of power. Certainly. It's a life of love. Because love, the state of love, is the state of being fully open to the power of intention. But there is also responsibility inherent in this intentional life. We are responsible for our own creations. And when I say responsible, we'll get into this a little bit later. I'm not using the word responsible in the sense of you are responsible, young lady or young man, for what you have done, but we are responsible for what we would term as wonderful and what we would evaluate as not so wonderful. Those experiences that we are having in our lives at this moment, we are responsible for those. And how those experiences affect the lives and experiences of those around us. So friends, we've got a very deep, meaningful, important topic to explore today. And if you are a return visitor, you know what we're about to dive into. I've got a spread laid out for us to explore, and let me show you the spread. What do you think of this spread? This is the second week I've used this grouping of cards. Now, if you are a new viewer to this channel, then let me give you an overview of what you just saw. This is my spread for this grouping of cards. All of my spreads are essentially similar. Yeah? All of my spreads for this kind of video are basically structured the same way with some variations. There are some oracle cards in the center which give us the thesis statement, which give us the overall theme for the spread. And then around those oracle cards, there are groupings of 3 cards. One of them is a card with a question called an inquiry card. And there are 2 cards from two different tarot decks. There is one card each from two different tarot decks, laying on top of the inquiry card, answering the question on the inquiry card. So that's what you just saw. And if you're curious about these decks, who the creators are, there will be a short clip at the end of this video that gives you all of that information. And also, as usual, in the description box below, there will be links so you can go and investigate these decks if you're curious about them, where you can purchase them, what they look like in more detail, and also where you can purchase them. Now remember, I do not get any financial remuneration if you use those links and purchase the decks through those links. Those links are just there for your convenience. And all of these decks are still available at the time of this filming. So they are beautiful decks. They are intriguing decks. They're decks that draw you in, I believe. And so I recommend checking them out. Okay, so I just gave you the overview of what you saw, and it's time to look at the thesis statement of this amazing spread. This central grouping of 5 oracle cards is cram-packed with ideas and information. They come from a deck called Sacred Geometry, but you notice that there is much more to this deck than just geometric shapes. Yeah, there's much more diversity in the art than just geometry. However, we are going to be reading this spread. It's an elemental spread. And the central card of the elemental spread is Spirit. In the West, we usually think of 4 elements. We have fire, water, air, and earth. That's the way I arrange them in my head. Other people arrange them in other sequences. But for me, it starts from fire to water, then earth and air. And then we often add a 5th element, ether. Now, ether is a word that we don't use very much in modern English, but it was the idea of essence, which is within and contains all of the other elements. It was kind of the spiritual element. And so we think of, or I think of, ether as spirit. Earth is generally the physical stuff. Yeah, the material, the money, our physical health, the structures of physical everyday worlds. Then we go ascending. Yeah, we go from earth to air, which is mind, its concepts, its vision, being able to see. Yeah, it's our communication and our thoughts, which are, to me, the precursor to physical manifestation. Now, for me, the next one is, in ascending order, is water, which is our unconscious, our pre-conscious, yeah? The thing that holds our ability to think. Water is also our emotions, and our emotions guide our thoughts. And they are the seed of the void from which everything springs, is also part of water. Now, above water is fire. Fire is energy. It's the divine spark. It's that first moment of creation. We think of the Big Bang, right? The Big Bang was a burst of energy. And it's in that burst of energy that all the other stuff was able to form from. So for me, we have ether, which is everything. Everything physical and everything non-physical comes from and is within ether. The first spark comes with fire. And that's our passion, our creativity, creation. Also sexuality. Also our drive, our leadership. But from that first spark of fire, we get the first beginnings of division. Fire divides into water. And we get the void, the creation of a void. There is no void if there's no other thing there. It's just, if there is no other thing to compare it to, there is no void. There's just ether. So the voidness comes from the energy of the fire and our unconscious, and our emotions. And from that interaction of creativity and emotions, we get the first beginnings of a material manifestation, which is thought, which is things formed into cohesive, near physical structure, pre-physical structure of thought. And then from the thought comes the actual physical manifestation of earth. So that's how I've got it arranged in my mind. And that's how I've got it arranged on the spread cloth. So in the center was ether for spirit. Upper right was, the lower left was fire. We moved up to water. We moved over to air and then down to earth. Now, last week when I read these cards, I read them from earth going up to ether in a kind of Fibonacci spiral. And it was very clear, I believe, that time, that was the best direction to read them. This time, I'm not so clear that it needs to start from earth and spiral back up into spirit. But I'm going to go with it that way anyway. I think you could also very easily start with spirit and come spiraling back down into earth. I think both ways of reading this are perfectly legitimate. And actually, after we discuss this movement into spirit, in the ascendance into spirit, we might just briefly take it back down into earth. We might. Let's see if my voice will carry us through all of that. Because there is a lot of information here, and I just rambled on a lot about what we were about to dive into. So the first card is the message is simple, but it's an expansive card. This is, let me look at the pronunciation because this is not a word that I am very comfortable with. It is Antakarana, which is not English, right? Antakarana. And this shape, it was the shape of, it looked like 3 V's that were kind of linked together. And if you looked at it one way, they formed a cube, but it didn't have to be a cube. And this is the idea of a bridge. The Antakarana is the idea of a bridge which connects our mind, our physically focused human minds, the brain kind of mind. It links that to the eternal self, the eternal mind, the eternal consciousness that we are here, having this physical experience in these human bodies. Now, we say connects the brain to the eternal self. It links the brain to the eternal self, and that kind of makes it sound like because there's a link, there's the possibility of a break in that link. And that is not possible. That is clearly not possible. It's a bridge, it's a link, but it's more than that. It's the flow of self into the physical, and also the reflowing of the physical experience back into the eternal nature that we are. And it's a flow that is there because we are always in cycle. We're always in expansion and growth and experiencing and evolving. So thinking of that as a cycle. It's not really a physical cycle because there's no physicality to this bridge. This bridge is a concept. So this bridge links also to our intuitive natures, to the unconscious and the holistic mind, rather than what we were just thinking of, which is the more rational, the more dissecting, the more analytical mind which we usually place within this physical gray matter structure inside of our skulls. Instead, it links this to the larger eternal self, of course. It also links to the unconscious, the more watery self, our intuitive nature, and the fiery self, which is our insights and our inspiration. Our inspiration arises and moves through this bridge into our more physically focused minds. And all of this happens when we are in alignment. Yeah? This bridge does not get broken. This bridge, this connection, this bridge, this link that we're describing and we're framing as a construct is never broken, but it can go out of alignment pretty poorly. Now, we can get out of alignment, certainly. We can get so focused on these thoughts that we have as human brain egos that we not wrench so much as we tug ourselves out of alignment with the fullness of our eternal nature. Does that make sense? Can you see how being so focused on lack, on fear, on anxiety, on worry, on the need to conquer, the need to overcome, the need to vanquish, the need to be the best. All of those thoughts and those ideas tug us out of alignment with the fullness of self, which knows the other stuff. What other stuff? Which knows the abundance that we are living in, which knows that we are love and we are here to co-create, not to dominate. That knows that all of those worries and fears are so temporary. Especially when we think of the eternal natures that we are. So there is the possibility of getting out of alignment. But when we are back in alignment, this bridge is fully flowing, and this bridge, the connection, is powerful. And that is where our power as these beings having human experiences, the power of us as these human beings and human doings exists in that alignment of the bridge. And the power, the full power of the universe flowing in us and with us, and us flowing with the powerful flow of intention. And that's what this first card is. Stated very briefly, it's that bridge, that connection of self to eternal self. Small s to big S. Self to self. To add volume to the difference. And then we go from here up into air, to mind. And we were already talking about mind in this earthy, physical section of our manifested bodies and manifested brains in alignment with our eternal nature. So we move up into mind. And mind, here we had sacred union. Perfect card for this spot, right? Because it's through mind that we can understand this bridge, the sacred union. And that bridge can be, of course, the bridge between self, and through which our passion and spirit are experienced in this human shell. It reminds us, this sacred union reminds us that we are passion and we are spirit. It reminds us that love is an intertwining that can be healing. And that love can be the love of self and self. It can also be the love of self and self And the self, this would be the eternal self, yeah? And self, that would be the other's eternal self, and self, yeah? There's this, another kind of bridge possible, yeah? There's me, there's my eternal, there's the eternal self that I am. There's you, there's the eternal self that you are. And then there's also that bridge, which is not really a bridge because there's no separation, but there's, well, let's imagine it as a bridge between the two eternal selves that we are. Because we are eternally in union as well. In our individuality, we are also one. Can you wrap your mind around that? Is that easy for you to wrap your mind around? Or does it take a little bit of effort to get your mind around that idea of being both individual self and unified everything? From the divine creator of all of this, which we are, and also this big S self, this big S self. Big S elf. Okay, so yes, love is an intertwining of self with self, but also with self and other self, right? Which is not really other. This card reminds us to look at and think about, what do I want from what I'm experiencing as other? Because remember, this is also a card in the mind area. Communication, vision, and thought. So, sacred union is here in mind because it's the mind, again, which helps us understand the fullness of our relationship of eternal self and human experiencing self, but it's also here to remind us that we can envision what kind of relationship we want with these other physically emanating beings in this physical universe. Me and you. You and your partner, whoever that might be. You and your parent, or your child, or your sibling, or your friend, whoever those people might be. We want to also look at that love relationship. Because there are times when we get, I think, a little bit confused about what we mean when we say love. There are 5 different words for love in Greek, at least 5. And I won't go through all of them, but there are things like agape, eros, I'm not going to try to take the time to remember all of the words, but there are words for love of friends. There is the love which is perhaps romantic and sexual. There's the love of parent and child. There are different kinds of love. And in English, because we really only use one word, we sometimes, when we hear love, we oftentimes think of the more passionate kind of love. Me and my soulmate, me and my sexual partner, me and my, now if you are asexual, it could also be me and my passion in life. But there are many different kinds of love. There is the spiritual kind of love, which encompasses all of that other love. And which is important? Which is the most empowering for us to experience and to focus on, do you think? This card is here to remind us. Maybe the question of which is more is inappropriate. Perhaps the best question is, which are we giving attention to? Are we giving attention to all, or just to one area or 2 areas? And what would be better? Giving attention to the fullness of expressions of love, or to a limited, more focused expression, perhaps with a husband, wife, partner, lover, whatever we want to call those relationships. So, the Sacred Union card is here to remind us to consider, to think of, to ponder our relationship with self, with other, and the love connection that is in all of that. And to look at how fully we are experiencing and relating in love. And this moves us to the next card, which is emotion. Now remember, we're going up the chain, right? At least the chain that I've laid out. We're going up the chain from mind to emotion. And in emotion, we had this beautiful card, Owl and Raven. Yeah? In the card, we saw the two birds, right? At the top, there was a white owl. At the bottom, there was a black raven. And you also saw the Taoist symbol of, in Chinese, yin-yang, or in Korean, yang. The positive, negative, the light, dark, those opposites, which are not separate, they are unified, and each contains a bit of the other as well. So, this card is here to remind us of the union of opposites. The opposites of, in this oracle system, one set of opposites was wisdom and magic. Why is that an opposite? I don't know, but I can see the power of uniting both wisdom and magic, because magic is inherent in wisdom, I believe, but wisdom is also inherent in the fullness of magic. And I could see that as being kind of a yin-yang relationship. It's the process of balancing aspects of our lives, of balancing the eternal nature that we are and the temporary human nature that we are. And to remember that in opposition, there is also tension and dissatisfaction inherent in these opposites. And these opposites oftentimes make boundaries. So we want to find ways to bring ourselves back into balance, to ease the tension between the opposite poles of the spectrums, which again, bend within each other to form the yin-yang. So how will dissatisfaction that we experience sometimes with this, the tugging apart of opposites, because these opposites tend to often want to pull apart. And in the space in the middle, oftentimes dissatisfaction begins to be experienced. So how do we want to mitigate that dissatisfaction, which is an emotional response, right? This card is here to remind us that balance and harmony and union are how we mitigate dissatisfaction with whatever we are in the middle of experiencing. It's here to remind us that it's in the union of these opposites that we find our rejuvenation, I can speak, rejuvenation, joy, and freedom. And our freedom to flow. Like a wheel, yeah? A wheel can turn when it's in harmony and it's in balance. But when the wheel starts to pull apart even just a little bit, it stops being able to roll, right? Our ability to flow is restricted, limited, perhaps even blocked. Temporarily, but blocked. So if we are in union and we can bring the yin and yang back together into this wonderful sphere we can begin to roll and flow with the powerful flow of intention. We do have opposites in every aspect because we are here in this physical universe. And remember, when after that first spark, when we split into opposites, we had fire and water. Opposites. But when those opposites can flow together in union, beautiful creation ensues. So we're here at the union of opposites with this yin and yang, our wisdom and our magic, our water and our fire. And so now we move into fire, which is love and power. Perfect card for the fire. Spot for this spread. Now, love and power here is to remind us of intentional balance as well. We've got balance reiterated in this card. This is the card of catalyst and prayer. Can you see how prayer can be a catalyst for our intentional lives? How prayer, what do you think of prayer as being? Is it a desperate plea for somebody to come fix us? If it is, that's not really the best. That's not really prayer in my understanding. Prayer is a prayer of gratitude and a prayer of expectation and a prayer of belief and knowing and faith that what I have decided for myself, what I want for myself, and I have placed on the powerful current of intention, that I am moving in the direction of that, and I am grateful for that. And I'm grateful for my own participation in the creation, and I am faithful to, and also grateful to, the divine for participating in the co-creation of the life that I am creating for myself. That's what prayer is. And that prayer, that is a catalyst for our moving with the powerful flow of intention in the direction of those things that we want. What are the things you want? What are the experiences you want to place on the current of intention? Can you see that the prayer is the prayer of thanksgiving for moving in the direction of experiencing those experiences? And it's that movement in the direction towards that intention gives us that is the counterbalance or the pair to the law of attraction, which brings things towards us. And when those two are united in the owl-raven, the yin-yang, which we had just a moment ago in the water spot, in the owl-raven yin-yang card, it's that union which allows all of this to be happening. Now the love and power, get back to love and power. The love and power card is also here to remind us to be willing to accept responsibility for our actions and our thoughts and use our power wisely. Now remember, just a moment ago, we had that balance of wisdom and power. Yeah, our wisdom and magic. And it's that it's because those two are together in one yin-yang that we are able to create in this universe. And that it is the power that we have in tandem with intention that allows us to create in this physical universe, to co-create in this physical universe. And this card is here to remind us to use that power wisely. Wisdom is part of the power, yes, but we also want to use the power wisely. And take responsibility for how we are using the power. We have the power to create an infinite diversity of experiences for ourselves. And that infinite diversity of experiences is focused by our thoughts. Our thoughts create our realities, our experiences. And it's because our thoughts create our realities, our thoughts create our experiences, that we want to take responsibility for our thoughts. And again, when I say responsibility here, I'm not saying bad human had a bad thought. Not what we're saying. And in some ways, this could be another way of describing karma, right? We take responsibility for the thoughts which are creating our realities. And when we see that we have created a reality that we are not so happy with, we know that we don't put the blame out there. We accept responsibility for how our lives are moving, for where our lives are going, how we're getting around rocks that seem to appear in our way. We're not taking responsibility for other people's creations. Yeah? Other people's creations can put a boulder in our way, but because we're also water, because we're also air, and we're also fire, there are ways of moving around those boulders which we can do flowing with our power of intention. And a lot of times, what do? We see this boulder coming up from the distance that we know that we didn't create, and we start blaming the boulder for being there rather than taking responsibility for our own actions and our own lives and our own flow of intention, and doing what water does and find a way around it. Now the path is there. All we have to do is follow our flow of intention. Rather than trying to put responsibility on that rock, we take responsibility for ourselves, for our own lives, and the course that we are moving in. And the way that we interpret our reality as well. Because our interpretation of reality is one of the greatest factors in shaping our experience in these physical bodies. And we take responsibility for that interpretation as well. An interpretation which often moves from mind into heart, out into the world. And we also want to remember that when we talk about power here, the power of spirit is not power over anybody else. Remember, that other being who, through their own desire, or perhaps even their fighting with their desire, created this huge boulder which appears to be in our way. Our power is not the power over that being to get them to get the boulder out of our way. Our power is our power not over them, but the power to do, to be, to move, to flow, to experience. It's the power to create, the power to be, the power to love and experience and share. Not the power over, not a controlling power. That controlling power is illusory. That's a nice word, illusory. The most powerful acts are acts of love, directly from the heart. The most powerful acts are not the acts of strength. And what I mean, strength. Love is strength. Yes. Are not the most powerful acts are not the acts of control. They're not the acts of manipulating. They're not the acts of banging things into place, of forcing things, of making things happen. The most powerful force is the force of water, the force of love, of gratitude, of joy. And that's what this card is here to remind us of, love and power, because love is power. And you notice this card and the card for spirit are so intricate that I'm not going to try and go into detail of what we were seeing in the cards. The next card, in this ether space, in the spirit space, transmutation, is a little bit easier to explain. What do we see? We see what looks to me like an atom and the electron orbits around it as we conceptualized those electron orbits a long time ago, maybe 50, 70 years ago. It reminds me of those old images of a round nucleus that kind of looked like a ball, and these other balls that were going around that nucleus in ellipses, in orbits. That's the word, orbits. And that's what it reminds me of. And this is the card for transmutation, dynamic change. And if you know anything about atomic chemistry, you know that electrons and interactions of atoms are dynamic and they change. Electrons change orbits. I can't even snap my fingers fast enough to give you even a hint of the speed and frequency with which electrons pop in and out of existence and in and out of orbits. And it's not like we would imagine a pebble flowing down a stream. Yeah, it's like they pop into existence here, and then they pop into existence here, and then they pop into existence here, and then they pop into existence here. Dynamic change. So this card is here to remind us that of energy in all of its forms. And it's a perfect card for the ether because it's that energy in all of its forms which creates this physical universe and creates the first burst of fire in the more physically manifested elements. Energy in all of its forms. From the ether, from the spiritual energy, the non-physical energy, into fire and electricity and that kind of thing that we normally think of as energy, into water, then into air, because fire and water, when they meet, they create air. And then all of those three together come together and form earth. And earth is a kind of energy as well. It's a slow energy, it's a stable energy. It's an energy that stays mostly where it is most of the time. It still moves. It flows with gravity. It flows with pressure. It flows with other forces of nature. But it's also pretty grounded, as we say, grounded. And this card is here to remind us that dynamic change is at work in our lives. Whether we are aware of it or not, whether we allow it or not, we can resist it pretty well. We can put up barriers against dynamic change pretty well, but it doesn't stop dynamic change from happening. We can't put up walls against each one of our cells in our bodies. Dynamic change is happening here, inside of this shell of humanness. And that's a wonderful thing, because dynamic change can transmute the core of our being into someone unrecognizable to us. And did that scare you for a moment? Did it scare you for a moment that you are transmuting into someone who is unrecognizable to you? Can you see how that has already happened in your life? Imagine yourself now. I assume that you are older than 5 years old. Imagine yourself now meeting 5-year-old you and saying, "Hi, I am you," and how wigged out your 5-year-old self would be. Your 5-year-old self would probably, 99.99999% be unable to recognize self in you. And that dynamic change at the core of our being is how we grow and expand and evolve as we are here in these bodies as well. That's all a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful thing. That is how we move through our lives with the powerful flow of intention. We create our future with intention. I hope that you can trust that you know that you understand that we create our lives through intention. We have again, responsibility for the lives that we create. Responsibility not only for our behavior in the world, and we have responsibility for that. Yeah, we run a red light, we are responsible for that. We break something, we're responsible for that. I think most of us can take responsibility for our actions fairly well. I'm not saying all of us. I know people who do not take responsibility for their actions, do not recognize that they have responsibility for their actions. There are people who ignore, resist, block out their knowledge of their responsibility for what they do in the world, physically. But we're also responsible for our thoughts. And that is because our thoughts produce in the world. Our thoughts become things, as they say. And we are responsible for those things that our thoughts become. And again, we're not talking about responsible, bad human, punishment. It's time to go to your room, sit in the corner, you're grounded. But rather, just responsibility. We recognize that we are the ones who did it. We are the ones who thunk it into place. And so we have responsibility for our lives and the way our lives affect also those around us. Not that they are able to blame us for what happened to them, but that we are responsible for our effect on other people. Because we are powerful beings. We are truly powerful beings of intention, flowing with intention and creating a lot of stuff that we know and even more stuff that we don't know. So, we take responsibility for our thoughts. That's what we want to do. We take responsibility for our thoughts. And so what do we do when we have these thoughts that are fearful, that are anxious, that are troubling, that are disturbing, that are unsettling, that are negatively surprising, that are powerless, or that give us feelings of powerlessness? What do we do when we have those thoughts which spring forth from the emotions we've been feeling? We can transmute those thoughts. We don't block them. We don't repress them. We don't hide them away. We don't create more trauma for ourselves in the future by taking those, I don't want to think this, I don't want to think this, I don't want to feel this, I don't want to feel this, and pack all that stuff away down in the bottom where it's hidden in the basement of our unconscious, and will eventually burst forth and cause trauma for us in the future. That's not what we're talking about. Transmuting our thoughts. There's a way to observe the thoughts that we're thinking, notice that they are thoughts that cause discomfort or less than happy reactions within ourselves, within our hearts, within our emotional space, and then do the transformation, the alchemy of changing that thought into something that could be more life-giving, more uplifting, more energizing, more powerful. more opening of ourselves to the powerful flow of intention. We can transmute those thoughts. And perhaps, not all of them, perhaps one way to transmute the thought is to let it flow by, which is what most meditation is and what meditation teaches us. It gives us the habit of allowing thoughts to flow by. That's one of the biggest benefits of meditation. If we are going to name benefits, and I'm not a benefit namer when it comes to meditation, we don't want to meditate because it will do stuff for us. But it does do some stuff for us. And one of the things it does is it allows us to let thoughts flow by. That's one way to allow ourselves to transmute the thought, is by allowing it to flow by into the void. Or we can look at the thought and turn it on its head, turn it over. Allow it to become something else. That's another way we can transmute a thought. Because as we transmute our thoughts, the thoughts that are troubling, are fearful, are resistant, as we transmute those thoughts, we usher in unity consciousness. We usher in our heart connection between us and between us. And I'm doing this gesture to be my gesture for small self and big self, little s, big S, the human experiencing consciousness, which is inextricably united with the eternal nature that we are. I am, and you are. And we also usher in compassion. Compassion is love in action in the world. We often think of compassion as feeling the same as the other, but for me, compassion is really love in action in the world. It's love moving out into the world and ushering in unity consciousness. So let me do this again, just briefly. We went from earth, which was our bridge, which is our connection, which is our unity with the eternal natures that we are. And we moved into the sacred union of self and self and self and self, and passion and spirit, and the fullness of diversity of love. And we moved from that into the water area of the yin and yang, the wisdom and magic, and how opposition and tension exists. But when we find balance and we find union between those two, we find rejuvenation, we find joy, we find the freedom to flow with intention. And as we rise from the waters into fire, we discover the power of love, the power of our connection with self and self. And we realize that it's power to be, to do, to experience, not power over. It's not the control of, but the being with, the power to be with, and to move with, and to create with. And then we moved into spirit, which is transmuting. We transmute our thoughts. We transmute our discomfort and our fear. We transmute those so that we can be the unified consciousness that we are. So that we can be the heart connection in these physical bodies. That we can take responsibility for our actions and our thoughts that create in this world. And we transmute the things that are, again, troublesome, negative, into flowers, like lotuses rising up out of the muck. Now, we can take that back in reverse, right? We are the lotus rising up from the muck. We are the unity consciousness, and we flow into a recognition of our power, which is love in the universe. And as we move into the universe as love, as power, as fire, into the water, we recognize now there is a splitting of essence into fire and water, into yin and yang, but there is beautiful power in the union of these two opposites. And as these two opposites are united, we have a third being born out in air, which is a sacred union. We recognize our sacred union here in this physical universe. And we look at our relationships and what we want from our relationships, and we ponder what we want from our relationships. And as we do that, we begin to create. We create earth. We create physicalness, stuffness. We create, and we recognize that, yes, as we are creating this stuff and we're putting attention on this stuff, we are still this bridge into the spirit, into the eternal natures that we are. And so we move back into ether. Does that make sense? Can you see that cycle, the flow through the elements, through aspects of self? And starting from earth into spirit, it cycles back into earth again, and it cycles back the other way around. This is such a deep, meaningful spread about our power, which is love, connection, union, and responsibility for how we use that power in the world. And again, not responsibility of bad human, go to your room, but responsibility for this is what I have done in the world, and this is how I feel about what I have done in the world, and I know that it is I who have done that in the world, and I can maybe do something else, or I can continue doing it and make a similar choice, or make a more expansive choice, or do more of it. This is a beautiful, beautiful spread. And we still have 4 questions to ask. Let's go to that first question. The first question is, how can I express more love? And that's a perfect question. Moving from that spread of 5 oracle cards, which was all about love, right? The power of love. So how can I express more love? And we've got 2 very interesting answers here. The first one was interesting in its banality. The first answer was 2 of Cups. Now, if you don't know, the 2 of Cups is the love card. It's more of a love card than even the Lover's card in the Major Arcana, at least for me. And so, how can I express more love? Well, I can express more love. That seems to be the answer. The 2 of Cups card you saw was 2 people, 2 humans with 2 cups, and we had the lion with wings, the lion's head with wings flying up above them. And these 2 cups are unified love, mutual attraction. It's not necessarily focusing so much on like mother-child love or the love of a teacher, but this is more the romantic kind of love, mutual attraction again. It's also partnership. And friendship is part of this. I mean, I'm not discounting or disassociating friendship relationships from this. Friendship, affinity is also part of this. But that as a base, and so from that base, we grow into mutual attraction and unified love. So if you think of the 2 of Cups as kind of a spectrum, on one end there's the more friendship side, but it grows and it expands into unified love and mutual attraction. And cooperation, emotionally cooperating with one another to create in this physical universe. So how can I express more love? What do you think? Love. Love more. Love more. That's how you can express more love, is to love more. And so the next card right next to it This was an interesting answer. And it's this card, actually, which sparked the question for my next video of this week, which I use Tarot de Marseille to explore a topic that comes from this larger Rider-Waite-Smith based spread. And it's this card that sparked the next question, which was the Knight of Pentacles. And now in a Rider-Waite-Smith card that it was drawn by Pamela Coleman Smith, we would normally see a knight on a horse with a coin, not a very quickly moving horse, a horse that seems like it might be plodding along or maybe just standing still. But we do have a knight on a horse with a coin. Here in this card, what did you see? You saw a knight, maybe, but a fairy knight, yeah, a sprite knight. Fairy, F-A-E-R-Y, the fae, the fairy knight. And what is this knight riding? Is it a horse? No, it's not. It's like a pill bug. And it's wonderful because when you think of pill bugs or this kind of bug, it might not be a pill bug, but it looks like a pill bug to me. When you see a bug that looks like this, what do you think? Do you think speed? Do you think quickness? Do you think of something like a mosquito, for example, which just darts around? Not by a long shot. This is a really, really slow-moving insect, right? They have little legs. They got a lot of them. They need a lot of them because they've got an immensely large body in comparison to those little legs that they just move very forward with. So this is not a quick-moving bug. However, just like the Knight of Pentacles, this is the card of hard work, of productivity, of slow and steady wins the race. It's the tortoise card, even. And other meanings for this card include things like methodical, working methodically, having a plan, setting out the plan, doing the steps, yeah, getting a to-do list and checking off the things as you do it. It's a rational approach to working in the world. It's a stable kind of working. It's not rushing ahead and doing stuff out of inspiration or intuition or sudden bursts of creativity, but doing the work, taking the steps, doing the chores around the house, being reliable, being stable. Not darting off hot-headed, but one step at a time. Routine. Conservatism in the best sense of the word. Now, conservatism, conserving the assets that we have. Yeah? Not risking the assets that we have for the potential of something even greater, but conserving what we've got and building on that. Now remember, what was the question this card is answering? How can I express more love? Express love. Washing the dishes. Express love. Making a to-do list. So, for me, I don't know about you. Now, you Virgos out there might say, well, yeah, of course. I'm not a Virgo. My mother's a Virgo. I'm not a Virgo. So I can see how for some people, this makes absolute sense. Makes absolute sense. And so, good for you. This card, for me, takes a little bit of wrapping around of mind. It takes a little bit of stretching to be able to get my mind around this one. Not because I necessarily think all forms of love are fiery, hot, passionate, and quick, hot-headed kinds of things by any means. However, relating love and, again, washing the dishes, sweeping the yard, it's not an immediate connection for me. But as I'm talking about it, I'm seeing the connection more and more clearly. It's not an innate, quick connection for me, but here talking about it, now I'm beginning to see that yes, my love, for example, for my family, is expressed in the things that I do for my family, in the day-to-day actions which I do to support, to nurture, to love my family. Washing the dishes, cleaning the house, earning money to bring home, making cards for birthdays, holidays, just to say I love you for no particular reason, growing flowers that I can use for a romantic meal. I mean, it could be all of those things, right? And now I can see even more so how those daily tasks and those checklists and all of those methodical things can be incorporated and are innately part of a romantic life, as well as a familial loving life and a friendship love life. That makes sense, doesn't it? It does make sense. So, what do we have? How can I express more love? One, I can love more. No brainer. And I can do the daily tasks which support and nurture and grow love and express love in the daily actions. So, I talked my way through this, I think, pretty well. What do you think? However, I did still pull out this question for my 3-card Tarot de Marseille video, and that will be up about 24 hours after this video goes up. So keep your eyes peeled for that and subscribe. Hit the alarm bell for notifications so that you know when that video is released to the public. So that was the first question. How can I express more love? Let's look at the second question. The second question is, what am I looking for? What am I looking for? And we have 2 Major Arcana cards here. I don't know if you noticed this when you saw the overall spread or if you locked in on this, but for this overall spread, we had cups, we had earth, coins, pentacles, we have wands. We don't have any swords, which is interesting because a lot of this a lot of the main ideas of this spread were how thoughts create in the world. So we don't have any thoughtful answers to these questions in this spread. So it might be something that either, well, when a suit is absent from a spread, we can get a couple of ideas. One is that suit is not really required in this spread. Yeah, perhaps mind is not a big player in the topic that we're examining. However, looking at the 5 oracle cards at the beginning of this spread, I think mind is a very, very big player here. So perhaps that is something that we want to pay attention to, how mind affects all of this. That maybe mind is where we have put not enough attention. Or perhaps we want to incorporate mind into all of these things. So in the first, how can I express more love? As we move forward doing the Knight of Pentacles work, we might want to put attention there. We might want to put attention into creating love and communicating about that. Both mind actions, air actions. I don't know why I'm putting it in air quotes. Well, because it's an air card, I'm using air quotes. What am I looking for? That's the second question you just saw. We have 2 answers, I said. Both of them are from the Major Arcana. One of them was the Hierophant, and one of them was Strength. And the Hierophant card in this deck is a little different from Pamela Coleman Smith's art, we only have one figure standing in front of what looks like a pope figure in front of two columns. Usually there are two supplicants in front, and there's a pope-like figure in the background facing us. And that pope figure is blessing the supplicants and communicating with the supplicants or the acolytes. Here we have a pope-like figure and what looks to me to be an angel. An interesting twist. So the pope here is, or the hierophant figure here, which is like a priest in ancient days or in Greek days, the hierophant is communicating with an angel, is in connection with the divine through the angel. And so this is a card of spiritual wisdom, tradition, religious beliefs, religious understandings, faith. So that's what I'm looking for, I think. Maybe not so much the structure and, well, it could be the structure and form of religion could be right for you. And there are times when I have found comfort and safety within the structure of religion, even though there were parts of me that were not I don't want to say fully accepted, because I think that is a false way of appreciating what our relationship with religion is. Because religious structures are human structures, and expecting that any human being is going to fully appreciate and accept who we are is futile, really. And there are some people who accept and know us more than others, but expecting that any other human being is going to fully, down to each twist of our DNA, fully accept and be open to us is folly. Requiring that is folly. So, the way I see myself as I am interacting with religious structure is that I am as much of myself as I am where I work or as I am where I play. And they're not the same selves. Now, I have a persona that I interact with in a certain place. I don't act the same way with my mother as I do with my lover, for example. I have different personas. And so I have a persona with which I interact, or through which I interact with religious structures. And there is a safety and comfort in that by knowing where you stand and knowing that there are structures around us, like being inside of a house, in a way. Being inside of a house cuts us off from being fully expansive, but we feel safety. We feel secure knowing where those walls are, and that those walls are also here to buffer against other turbulence that we could experience. And religious structures can also buffet us against experiences that might be more distressing. So religious structures can be a benefit, and maybe some of us are looking for that, and that is wonderful. Go for it, look for it. Find your place. I've found my place. So it could be, it doesn't have to be, but it could be religious beliefs and finding our place within those beliefs and within those structures. Whatever religion it is, be it Christianity, be it Hinduism, be it a native tradition. Maybe if we are more traditional belief structure, pre-Christianity, pre-monotheism, pre-complex societies, and I'm not saying that, for example, okay, let's pick one just out of a hat. Nomadic societies. I'm not saying that nomadic societies do not have their own complexities. That's not what I'm saying. But, you know, when we compare a nomadic society to ancient Babylonia or ancient China with their societies, there's a little bit more complexity and different kinds of complexities. So before all of that, we all had a very similar starting off point. And even at that starting off point, there was a structure, a form of religious and spiritual beliefs. There was a religion of sorts. And now, in comparison to, for example, Christianity and Hinduism and Islam, we think of those things as, oh, that's spirituality. But before all of that other stuff came into form, that was religion. And so, yes, we could find our place within that religion as well. Within those traditions. And maybe that's what we're looking for. That spiritual wisdom. That connection with the divine. That openness to divine inspiration and wisdom, and also openness to communication with and prayer. Remember, we talked about prayer in the oracle section of the spread. It could also be conformity and conservatism and institutions and education. And there's a place for all of those things in our lives, I believe. Now, the Hierophant card, we go to school and we get benefit from going to school, most of us. We have our institutions in our societies, and we have institutions in our tribes as well. The institution of the medicine person. The institution of the tribal leader. Those are also institutions. They don't look like the CIA building, but there's a different kind of institution in that kind of society. And we benefit from those institutions. Sometimes they can be controlling. Oftentimes they can be controlling. But there's also benefit. And it's that benefit that oftentimes we are looking for. And also, again, connecting the divine and the physical. So that's one side. Structure, belief structures, spiritual structures, education, connection with the divine. And on the other side, we have the Strength card, which is usually a female presenting figure interacting with a lion, perhaps in the Rider-Waite-Smith decks. Some older decks also had a female figure, but interacting with a column that seemed either to be cracking or maybe tilting or about to fall over, maybe, or not. There are also cards in which it was Hercules, a Hercules-like figure wrestling with a lion or beating it over the head with a stick. But here, what did we have? We had a beetle, a big black beetle with big pinchers and a fairy figure holding the pinchers apart, maybe. So this is the Strength card. What am I looking for? I'm looking for strength. I'm looking for courage. I'm looking for fortitude and security. We got that echo of security in this card as well. I'm also looking for compassion, because the Strength card for me is, yes, strength, courage, fortitude, all of those wonderful things. But it's also, some people think of it as this human self and this animal self, and I don't think of them that way. I think of them as the more conscious self and the more unconscious self. Not subconscious, not unconscious, but not unconscious as in the kind of unconscious of, taking too many drugs, knocking yourself out. But the unconscious of the unconscious mind, the collective consciousness, all of that water of the consciousness, and the light, the fiery, ego-like conscious structure. And the balance of both of these things. The balance and the harmony of these things, that's what strength is to me. So the Fey figure would be the ego, the light, the bright, conscious mind. And the beetle would be the water, the unconscious, the collective conscious, the water part. And these two are here in harmony and in balance. And that's what I'm looking for. Because it's in that integration, it's not even fully integrated. That would be more the temperance card. But they are in balance, and they are in harmony, and they are in communication. Like the owl raven, the yin-yang card from the oracle spread. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for my place, my safe space, my tradition, my structure, my education, and I'm looking for my own inner strength and my harmony of and balance of all aspects of myself, my alignment in a nutshell. Now that makes sense, doesn't it? In relationship to the oracle cards we heard, but also in relationship to our everyday lives. I think that makes absolute sense for what we are looking for. We have a third question. Let's take a look at that. The third question is, what can I celebrate? And isn't that a wonderful question? The two answers to this question are also wonderful. One of them is a pentacle and one of them is a cup. Yeah? In the Pentacles side, we have the Three of Pentacles. And in this card, now usually the Three of Pentacles, in Pamela Coleman Smith's art, we see the interior of what looks like it could be either a church or a castle or some late medieval structure. And there are three people inside of there. One of them is obviously some kind of a mason or craftsman doing some work on the structure. One of them looks like they're probably of the royal class, perhaps holding the plans of this structure. And another person looks like it could be a cleric. Now, so we've got three different classes of people. We have each one of them having their own talents, abilities, potentials, and they're all coming together to create this one thing. And one of them has the plans, one of them has the actual tools, one of them perhaps has the money. Each one has their own thing to contribute. And it's really a thing, it's a skill, it's something to contribute. In this card, we have the three coins floating up in the sky, which is an interesting place for those coins to be, looking a little bit like UFOs. But we have these three coins floating in the sky, and we have these two figures. One of them looks like, they both look very male presenting, but one of them looks like they're painting, and one of them looks like they're lying on the ground, perhaps composing either poetry or maybe music, but they're writing something. Each of them, the two, has their own form or mode of creation, of creativity. And the Three of Pentacles is usually a card for teamwork, which is interesting because these two people don't look like they're working on the same thing. I mean, they don't look like they're focusing on the same creation. It would be possible, for example, for a painter and perhaps a poet to be looking at the same thing and being inspired by the same thing and expressing that inspiration in different ways. But these two people don't even look like they are focusing on the same thing. Now, it does look like the one lying on the ground, perhaps in the grass, writing, is focusing on the painter. and the painter is focusing on something else. So perhaps you could see that kind of flow, that the painter sees something and inspires a creation, and then the writer sees the painter, and the painter inspires the writer to create something else. That's possible. But it's a very different kind of teamwork card, or collaboration, or even fraternity. Yeah, fraternity, not like sorority, not like the fraternities of a university, although it could be that as well. But fraternity of people of like mind gathered together in society to do stuff. Fraternity, the brotherhood of man and sisterhood of man, of human. It's also the card of implementation of plans, yeah? The painter, have you ever painted? Have you ever composed music? Have you ever done anything creative in that sense of creation? Or cooked, made a recipe, cooked food? Even the act of cooking. There is a form, there's a structure that you decide on first, and then you add the elements to it, right? For a painting, the painter first sees and then plans out on their canvas where things will be and then gets to work at it. The poet doesn't just, well, there are stream of consciousness poets, but even that is a form that we're fitting ourselves to. But a writer of sonnets, a writer of limericks, a writer of heroic ballads, there's a structure that the poet knows and has selected for their means of communication, and then the poet fits the words into the structure. Cooking. Now, unless you're doing completely inspired cooking, looking at your refrigerator and picking stuff that looks like they might go together well and tossing it into a pot or a skillet, except for that, you decide on a structure. I'm going to make a curry. I'm going to make a casserole. I'm going to make a this. And whether they are ingredients off of a recipe or just what you've got in your kitchen, you're matching those ingredients to the structure of the recipe or the kind of food you decide to create. Because a casserole is going to be very different from a barbecue. And the decision of the structure of the food that you're going to make is going to affect the ingredients you choose and how you're going to put them together. And that's part of this implementation of plans from the Three of Coins. Makes sense, right? Okay, right next to it, we had the Ten of Cups. And this is a very different card from most tens of cups. In this card, instead of seeing a family, whether it's a human family, as in Pamela Coleman-Smith's art, or in some other decks, they're a family of like rabbits or swans or other animal family groupings, and there's the mommy and daddy, and there are the kids, and oftentimes there's this rainbow of cups overhead, and there's familial bliss. In this card, what do we have? We have bees and berries. Yeah, there were berries which look a little bit like loganberries to me. I'm not sure if they're loganberries, but they look like loganberries to me. And there are bees flying around. Bees, a hive. I guess that's a kind of family. We don't get so much, well, there is a queen bee and there are worker bees, but in this card, we don't see one of the bees being obviously a queen bee, one of them obviously being a drone bee, one of them obviously being a worker bee. We don't see any of that. We just see bees flying in and among these berries. And usually the Ten of Cups is a card of divine love, and I guess I can get that from here. Now the bees are experiencing divine love as they experience the bounty and emotional plenitude, abundance of these berries. Blissful relationships. And I can imagine that these bees are blissed out on all these berries. Harmony, happiness, joy, alignment, all of these wonderful things are the Ten of Cups. Now, some people think of a lot of these qualities as being part of the Nine of Cups. And that's possible. The cup, emotional satisfaction, being full and being filled and being fulfilled can be the Nine of Cups. Usually alone. I, of myself, in recognition of all of the experiences I'm having, I'm feeling satisfied in and of myself. The 10 is where that satisfaction goes out into your community, your selected community, your biological community. It flows out into the community, and we share that satisfaction out among those that we love, and we support and nurture emotionally with that feeling of satisfaction and happiness and joy and love. So it's that Ten of Cups is the emotions flowing out into and around the people we have selected or we are with. And those are things that we can celebrate, certainly. We can celebrate our collaborations. We can celebrate our teamwork of creating together, of co-creating, because this universe is, if nothing else, a co-creation, and is worthy of celebration. The Ten of Cups, I can celebrate this overflowing of love and harmony and happiness into the community, into my group, into my peeps, into my tribe. Very, very worthy of celebration. We have a fourth card, a fourth question, answered with 2 cards. Let's take a look. The fourth question, who can help, is a very interesting question. And this is the first time that this kind of question has appeared for me in the years that I've been doing this kind of series. But before we get to who can help, which again is an interesting question, let's quickly see how we got here. Now, we started with a very, very long, deep dive into our relationship as self, the interaction of the eternal nature that we are, having these human experiences, and the power that we have, and the harmony that we want to move towards, and that our thoughts create into the universe, and that we want to take responsibility for our thoughts and our creations in the universe. In a nutshell, that's what that oracle grouping was telling us. That we are powerful because we are eternal beings having a human experience. And as we are, there is love that is part of that. And our power is love. Love is our power. And we are in balance. We are in unity. And as we recognize that love is our power and that we have the power to create and that our emotion fuels the power of our creation, we also know that mind and our thoughts are our tools for creation. And we take responsibility for the way that we use our tools and know that the results of the use of our tools is our responsibility. And that we can transmute the tools that aren't working for us into something that will work for us as well. It's not like I've got this hammer and I can only use this hammer. Whether I feel comfortable with this hammer or not, I've got to keep using this hammer. No, I can transmute this hammer into a screwdriver or a rolling pin or something else. Something that I'm more comfortable with. So when I come up with maybe a hammer-like beat you over the head kind of thought that it actually causes trepidation, anger, fear, guilt within me, I can transmute this hammer into something more creative, perhaps a paintbrush, a rolling pin for rolling up pies. So we came from that oracle spread into how can I express more love, and I express more love by loving and by doing the daily tasks that support loving interactions and feed loving interactions. And so what am I looking for? I can express more love. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for my structure, my place, my education, and my alignment, and my balance, internal balance. So what can I celebrate? I can celebrate the co-creation that I'm here doing, that we just talked about. And I can celebrate the love that is now able to flow out and into my community. So who can help? Sometimes we want help. Have you ever thought, if only there was somebody who could help me? And apparently we can ask that question, who can help? Hopefully not from a place of desperation, of feeling powerlessness, somebody who will come and pull me out of my powerlessness. That's not what this is asking about, because there is nobody who can do that. Our movement out of our powerlessness is our responsibility. We can get guidance from somebody. Okay, so maybe somebody can help, but they're not going to be able to come and do it for us. We're the ones who have to do it. They can shine the light. And shining the light is a kind of help. Okay, I'm sorry. So yes, people can help. So who can help? And we've got 2 cards answering this. Interesting cards. Very, very interesting cards. Both of them wands. 8 of Wands and the 2 of Wands. And perhaps these cards are here to describe the kind of person. I mean, they're not person cards. I would have kind of expected court cards, or at least one court card to appear here. But we've got these 2 qualities, these 2 fire qualities. The fire, the first manifestation into physical from the ether. And the first 8 of Wands. Usually in Pamela Coleman Smith's art, we have these 8 wands that are flying through the sky, and there's nothing else. Well, there's a landscape in the background, but there are no other people there. There are no people there. It's just these wands flying through the air, looking like they're flying through the air. Here we've got wands flying through the air as well, all lined up above, and but there are people here, which is interesting. They look like they're in a rather precarious position to me. But the 8 of Wands is the card of movement, fast-paced movement. Not the slow movement of the Knight of Pentacles, but fast-paced movement. Change. Not slow change, but rapid change. Remember, we've got that idea of change in the transmutation card in the ether from the Oracle. Did that make sense? Let me try saying that in English. In the 5 Oracle cards spread at the beginning, there was the transmutation card, which reminds me of the 8 of Wands as well. That change. We can change into something that would be unrecognizable to us. And it's a swift change. It's the card of action, of vigor, of vitality, and alignment also, because we don't want to have all of this power and all of this energy and all of this speed when we're out of alignment. If we engage all of this power when we're out of alignment, we're going to crash so fast, we're going to burn so hot, it's going to be painful. Now we'll rip ourselves apart. So we want alignment when we engage this kind of power. It's also acceleration. Yeah? It's not just the speed, it's getting up to speed as well. Getting up to that speed, that fast-paced change, movement. That's the 8 of Wands. And then the 2 of Wands, now it's earlier in the suit. It's the first planning card. Now the Ace of Wands is the potential, the seed for some creation, for some passion, for some burst into eventual manifestation into the world of inspiration. But it's that first, it's the seed, it's that first burst of fire, like the pilot light on a stove that comes to life. The 2 of Wands is where, okay, so I got this seed, now what am I going to do with it? It's the planning. It's the figuring out what to do with this new fire that I've discovered. Decisions. Not that, and so decisions, we think of it as like the Two of Swords is a total decisions card, but there's an element of deciding what to do with this passion. Not deciding between two things, but so I've got this thing, what am I going to do? Decisions, discovery as well. Because part of the decision process is discovering what is possible. So I got this fire, what's possible? What can I do? Which direction am I going to choose? Which is pulling me more? And aspiration. I have hopes for the future. I have hopes for what this flame, what this kernel, this nugget of passion can grow into. That's what the Two of Wands is. And here we've got, so interesting, we got this white owl again, right? White owl, remember, was the wisdom card from the Oracle deck. So we can bring that back here into this card. So the owl of wisdom is part of our discernment, is another word. Discernment process in our creation with passion and inspiration. So the Two of Wands is a discernment card with wisdom, hopefully. So who can help? Who can help? Well, apparently, the kind of person who could really help us is somebody who is energetic, who is fast-paced, who has got vigor, vitality, vigor and vitality. That's spit and vinegar, as my grandmother would say. I don't know why spit and vinegar means vigor and vitality, but apparently it does. Also the one who is the wise owl, who can discern, who can make decisions, who can plan what is possible and discover what potential lies within the flame, the pilot light, the first spark of possibility. That's the kind of person we're looking for. That's the kind of person who will be able to help us as we explore the power that we have and that we are. As eternal beings in this human experience. Taking responsibility as we love our way with the powerful flow of intention. What do you think? Does that all link up for you? It links up for me. I'm not sure if I've made sense out of it for you. I'd like to hear if I have or if I haven't. Let me know below. So friends, hit the like button, please. Please. Because it helps the channel. It brings the channel in front of the eyes of more people, the more engagement there is. And one way of engaging is hitting the like button. Another way of engaging is hitting the subscribe button, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the alarm bell so that you get notifications of when I've uploaded videos. And if you haven't subscribed, I recommend doing that. And you will also get a notification of when my shorter Tarot de Marseille based video goes up. Also, share this around. Yeah, share this on other platforms. Share a link in another space. That would be wonderful. Share it with people who you think might be interested in this kind of discussion. And comment below. I would really love to hear from you. And friends, if you're interested in a private reading, it wouldn't necessarily have to be this intense. I can do quick readings, I could do longer readings, medium-sized readings, anything. Rider-Waite-Smith. If you're interested, Tarot de Marseille. I can use other systems. But if you want a private reading from me, I've got a link to my Instagram, because if you go to Instagram, you can send me a direct message. And if you send me a direct message, then I will respond and we can find a way for you to get a private reading from me. And so, there we go. In just a moment, there will be, again, a short video that gives you the names of the decks and who created them. So take a look at that. And the links are below. So friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.